Instead of answering with words, I reached for the buttons of his shirt, my fingers working slowly, deliberately. His breath hitched, his hands settling on my waist as I pushed the heavy Oxford cloth from his shoulders. The cold, blue-white light from the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Chicago penthouse cast long shadows across his skin, highlighting the lean, calculated strength of a man who spent his life climbing mountains and corporate ladders alike. A strength I'd only imagined before. "Beautiful," Rowan whispered, his hands skimming up my sides, and I realized with a jolt he meant me. The thin silk of my slip dress slipped away under his careful touch, pooling around my ankles on the polished concrete floor like spilled mercury. I should have felt exposed, vulnerable, standing bare in the middle of this glass-walled cage. But the way he looked at me, not with lust, but with a kind of awestruck reverence, like I was a masterpiece he'd finally been allowed to touch, made me feel incandescently powerful instead. He lifted me easily, the faint scent of rain and expensive sandalwood clinging to him. He carried me to the minimalist leather lounger we had been using as a workspace for the architectural models, laying me down with a gentleness that seemed at odds with the raw hunger in his eyes. The leather was cool against my back, but his hands were warm, tracing patterns of fire across my skin. "Welcome to Heartstrings and Scars, where we unravel the untold stories of love, betrayal, and the life-changing lessons they leave behind." If you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join our growing community. We promise you stories that will make you reflect, question, and maybe even see yourself in the characters we share. "Tell me what you need, Serafina," he said, his voice low and rough with a want that echoed my own. "You." I breathed the word of confession. "Just you." His mouth found mine again, hungrier this time, less restrained. I could taste the desperate desire on his lips, feel it in the way his hands trembled slightly as they explored the curve of my waist, the swell of my hip, when he kissed down my throat, finding that exquisitely sensitive spot just below my ear that made me arch beneath him. I couldn't hold back the soft, keening moan that escaped. "So responsive," he murmured against my skin, the words of vibration that shot straight to my core. "So perfect." His lips continued their unhurried journey, a devastating exploration that discovered places that made me gasp, made me clutch at his broad shoulders. Every touch was deliberate, patient, like he was memorizing the map of me with his mouth. The sensation was overwhelming, the beautiful contrast of his calloused palms against my smooth skin, the gentle, electric scrape of his stubble, the unnerving way he seemed to know exactly where to touch, where to press, to make me tremble on the verge of unraveling. When he settled between my thighs, his breath warm and moist against my most sensitive skin, I thought I might come apart from the sheer, agonizing weight of anticipation alone. His first touch was feather-light, a teasing, ghostly caress that made me arch toward him with a desperate, unspoken need. "Patience," he whispered, and I could hear the smile in his voice, but patience was the last thing I wanted. I needed more. I needed him to stop holding back, to give in to the savage hunger I could see burning in the depths of his dark eyes. When he finally gave me what I craved, the sensation was electric, a bolt of pure lightning that sent shock waves of pleasure through my entire body. My fingers tangled in his thick, dark hair, holding him close as he worked his patient, perfect magic. He was thorough, relentless, bringing me to the very peak again and again before pulling back just enough, keeping me suspended in that delicious, maddening tension. "Please," I gasped, my body trembling with a need, so profound it was painful. This time, he listened. His rhythm intensified, his tongue stroking and teasing until I shattered, crying out his name as wave after glorious wave of release crashed over me. He held me through it, his hands gentle on my thighs, his mouth soft against my skin until the last tremor faded. When I could breathe again, I pulled him up to me, tasting myself on his lips as we kissed, deep and slow. His body was tense with restraint, with his own unfulfilled need, and I needed, to give him the same soul-stealing pleasure he'd given me. I pushed him back against the leather cushions, straddling his lap, feeling a surge of power as his hands gripped my hips. The hard evidence of his desire pressed against me, hot and insistent, making us both groan. "Serafina," he said, my name a warning and a plea. I silenced him with a kiss, positioning myself above him, taking him inside me slowly, deliberately. We both gasped at the sheer sensation of it. He filled me completely, perfectly, a feeling of rightness so profound it felt like coming home. For a heartbeat, we stayed still, adjusting to the intimate connection, to the staggering reality of what we were doing. Then I began to move, setting a slow, rocking rhythm that had him gripping the lounger, his head falling back with a groan of pure pleasure. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe button to support us and join our growing community. We promise you stories that will make you reflect, question, and maybe even see yourself in the characters we share. "God, you feel incredible," he rasped. The praise sent heat spiraling through me, encouraging me to move faster, to take what I needed. His hands guided my hips, helping me find the perfect angle, the one that made stars explode behind my eyelids. We moved together like we'd been doing this for years, like our bodies knew each other's secrets. Every thrust, every roll of my hips built the tension higher, tighter, until I could barely think past the need consuming me. When his thumb found that sensitive spot where we were joined, I cried out, my inner muscles clenching around him. The sensation pushed him over the edge. His grip tightened as he pulled me down for a desperate, crushing kiss, swallowing each other's moans as we came apart together. Afterward, we stayed entwined, my head on his chest, his fingers stroking through my damp hair. The reality of what we'd done, here in the minimalist glass tower I shared with my husband, should have crashed over me with guilt and regret. Instead, I felt complete for the first time in years. "We can't do this again," I whispered against his skin, not meaning a single word, hoping he'd argue. "I know," he said, his arms tightening around me. But even as we said the words, I was already craving his touch again, already planning the next time Arthur would be away on business. This was dangerous, destructive, everything I should avoid. It was also the most alive I'd felt in. The digital clock on the kitchen island glowed, midnight, the soundless change of digits, making us both start. Reality began to creep back in. My husband's home, my sterile marriage, the line we'd crossed that couldn't be uncrossed. "I should go," Rowan said, but made no move to leave. "You should," I agreed, making no move to let him. We dressed, slowly, reluctantly, stealing kisses between adjustments of clothing. At the heavy soundproof door, he cupped my face in his hands, his thumb brushing across my swollen lips. "This can't happen again," he said, but his eyes told a different story. "I know." He kissed me one last time, soft and lingering, before stepping out into the sterile, quiet hallway. I watched from the window as the elevator lights descended, my body still humming with the memory of his touch. The next morning, Arthur came home from his tech summit in Tokyo, exhausted and distant, barely looking at me as he headed straight for his home office. I made espresso, going through the motions of normalcy, all while feeling like I was wearing my secret like a second skin. "How was your week?" he asked, absently, scanning spreadsheets on his tablet. "Productive." I lied, the word tasting like lead. Rowan stopped by. He helped me finalize the structural specs for the museum model. Arthur glanced up, his eyes scanning the room. "The model looks precise," he said, already turning back to his screen. If only he knew what else had happened. How his wife had come apart in the arms of his own business rival just hours ago. The thought should have filled me with shame. Instead, It sent a treacherous heat pooling low in my belly. 3 days passed before Rowan called, his voice carefully controlled. Professional. I think I left my precision laser measure, he said. Mind if I come by to get it? We both knew he hadn't left anything. We both knew why he was really calling. Arthur's in New York until Friday, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. I'll be there in 20 minutes. This time there was no pretense, no careful conversation. The moment he stepped through the door, we were on each other. Months of professional restraint finally shattered, completely. He pressed me against the cool glass of the entryway, the city lights twinkling behind us, his mouth hungry on mine, his hands already working at the buttons of my silk blouse. I tried to stay away. He growled against my throat. Don't, I gasped, arching into his touch. Don't ever stay away. My blouse hit the floor, followed quickly by his shirt. This time there was no slow exploration, no careful reverence. This was raw need, desperate hunger, the inevitable collision of two people who'd been denying themselves for far too long. He lifted me, my legs wrapping around his waist, as he carried me back to the living room, the scene of our first surrender. But instead of the lounger, he sat me on the edge of the heavy marble kitchen island, his hands spreading my thighs as he knelt between them. I've thought about nothing but you, he confessed, his fingers working at the clasp of my bra. How you felt, how you tasted the sounds you made. His words sent liquid fire through my veins. When my bra joined the growing pile of clothing, his mouth was immediately on my breast, drawing the sensitive peak between his lips until I cried out. He was in no hurry, lavishing attention on first one breast, then the other, until I was trembling and pliant with need. Only then did his hands move lower, finding me already slick with want. So ready for me, he murmured, his fingers stroking through my wetness. Always so ready. When he pushed one finger inside me, then two, I had to grip the cold marble edge to keep from falling. He worked me expertly, his thumbs circling that sensitive bundle of nerves while his fingers moved in and out, building me toward a release that felt just out of reach. Come for me, he commanded, his voice rough with his own need. Let me watch you fall apart. His words, combined with the perfect, maddening pressure of his touch, sent me over the edge. I cried out, my body arching as pleasure crashed through me in violent, shuddering waves. Before the aftershocks had even faded, he was positioning himself at my entrance, the head of his length pressing against my still sensitive flesh. Look at me, he said, waiting until my glazed eyes focused on his. I want to see your face when I fill you. He pushed forward slowly, both of us groaning as he stretched me, filled me, completed me. When he was fully seated inside, we stayed still for a moment, foreheads pressed together, breathing hard. Perfect, he whispered. We're perfect together. Then he began to move, each thrust deep and purposeful, angled to hit that spot deep inside me that made me see stars. I wrapped my legs tighter around his waist, pulling him deeper, harder, desperate for everything he could give me. The marble felt cold beneath me, a stark contrast to the heat of his body, the sound of our gasps and moans mixing with the slick sound of our bodies joining again and again. This was madness, beautiful and terrible and absolutely irresistible. More, I gasped, my nails digging into his shoulders. I need more. He responded by lifting my hips, changing the angle, driving deeper until I was sobbing with pleasure. Every nerve ending was on fire. When his thumb found my center again, circling in perfect rhythm with his thrusts, I knew I was lost. The orgasm built like a storm, gathering strength until it was all-consuming. That's it, he growled, feeling me tighten around him. Come on, my girl, show me how good I make you feel. His words pushed me over, and I shattered, screaming his name as my body convulsed around him. The sight and feel of my release triggered his own, and he buried himself deep, his own cry of completion muffled against my shoulder as he filled me with his warmth. We stayed connected for a long time, both trembling, both knowing we'd crossed another line. This wasn't just physical anymore. This was something deeper, more dangerous. "What are we doing?" I whispered. "Something we can't stop," he replied, his lips brushing my temple. And he was right. Over the following weeks, we met whenever we could, stealing moments of passion in the home I shared with my husband. Each encounter was more intense than the last. Sometimes it was slow and tender. Other times it was fast and desperate. One evening, as a blizzard whirled against the penthouse windows, Rowan arrived to find me in nothing but one of Arthur's custom-tailored white dress shirts. The sight of me in my husband's clothing should have been a stark reminder of our betrayal. Instead, it seemed to inflame him. "Take it off," he said, his voice dark with command. I hesitated, recognizing the symbolism, the final destruction of my marriage's boundaries. Then I pulled the shirt over my head, standing before him, completely bare, completely his. He was on me in seconds, taking me against the cool plaster of the hallway wall, my legs wrapped around his waist, my back pressed against the wall as he drove into me again and again. "Mine," he growled against my throat, each word punctuated by a thrust. "You're mine." And I was, completely, utterly, irreversibly his. The affair continued for 2 months, a secret dance of stolen moments. But secrets have a way of demanding acknowledgement. It all came to a head on a snowy Tuesday evening. Arthur had promised to be in Manhattan overnight, but as Rowan and I lay tangled on the living room rug, I heard the subtle, distinctive beep of the electronic smart lock. Terror froze my blood. Arthur was home. We scrambled for our clothes, clumsy, with adrenaline. I managed to pull on my dress while Rowan got his pants back on, but there was no hiding what we'd been doing. The air still smelled of our passion. Our hair was a mess, our lips swollen. "Serafina," Arthur called from the foyer. The flight was canceled. I thought we could finally discuss the merger. He stopped dead in the living room doorway. He took in the scene. His wife, disheveled and flushed. His greatest professional rival, shirtless and guilty. The silence stretched, thick and heavy with devastating revelation. "I see," Arthur said finally, his voice eerily calm. But he didn't look at Rowan. He looked directly at me and held up his phone. "I hope it was worth it, Serafina, because you just triggered the infidelity clause in the prenup Rowan and I drafted together 6 months ago." What happened next changed everything. Rowan looked at Arthur, then at me, and I realized with a sickening jolt that the rival wasn't Rowan. The rival was me. They hadn't been enemies. They had been partners in a high-stakes game, where I was the only one losing. But that's a story for another time. The question is, if you were in my place, would you have seen the trap? Or would the pleasure have blinded you too? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. And don't forget to like this video and hit subscribe for more stories that push the boundaries. Turn on notifications so you never miss what happens next.